He's an award-winning author, educator, transformational speaker in the field of spirituality, mysticism, and death and dying. That's what it says. So I know this is a very difficult topic. Many times we don't talk about that. But is that something you just care about? That's what he'll be focusing on. He has written some books. His books include Love is a Secret, and Heart of the Healer, and Light Upon Light, and 5 Pathways to Awaken the Mindful Self. Dr. Vidich has been an adjunct assistant professor of religion at Manhattan College, at the Iona College in New Rochelle, where he has taught some courses in nature and experience of religion, meditation, death and dying, and Islamic studies. He is a public relations director and board member of the Science and Spirituality Meditation Center in Amityville, New York. He has been meditating for over 44 years. If this is a couple-year-old, then it must have gone out. Under the guidance of the 3 great spiritual teachers of the Sant lineage, namely Sant Kapal Singh Ji Maharaj, that's what he got initiated with, Sant Darshan Singh Ji Maharaj, and the current master, Sant Rajendra Singh Ji Maharaj. Andrew Vidich is an award-winning author. I would like to, on behalf of the Science and Spirituality local center here, I would like to welcome Andrew and give us some welcome bouquet on behalf of our girl Rohini. Would like to get some flowers. So Andrew, please come and accept our welcome. So, Andrew, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. It's my great joy to be able to share a few moments with you and the teachings of our great spiritual masters. You had an opportunity, some of you were here, to listen to an introduction to Sant Rajendra Singh. And I'd like to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank the organizers here for their gracious invitation, and also to extend a congratulations for the acquiring of this wonderful, beautiful new center. So I'd like to... This is a momentous occasion. When these centers come into existence, they help provide insight and guidance and quench the spiritual thirst of seekers from all different backgrounds, races, religions, and nationalities. It is a path of light, and it is through light and love that we will return. So this is a fantastic and beautiful center, and I'm just so thrilled to be here with all of you tonight. So I'd like to also just share one bit of a recollection. When I was initiated in 1972, we had very few books. There were very few centers. There were no DVDs, there were no movies, there were no audio CDs. There was not a single spiritual center in the United States at that time. And now I look back 45 years later and I see that the teachings of light and love has spread not only all over the United States, and we have centers on almost all 4 corners of the United States, but to all corners of the globe. So we are living in a very, very important time. And this is, and has been prophesied by great masters of all traditions. We are entering a spiritual renaissance, the golden age of spirituality. It is a time when souls are thirsting for truth and looking for the deep inner, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, soul-to-soul, direct contact with God. And it is the great masters of spirituality, the sages, the saints, the mystics, who come to give that light. So I'd like to talk today about meditation and the afterlife journey of the soul. So I want to begin with a little humorous story that hopefully will begin us on our little journey here. Afterwards, I'd like to introduce a very short and simple but profound meditation technique for you, given by our spiritual tradition. And then we can open up the floor, as Arvind has said, to some questions and comments and so on and so forth. So this is a story about a man named Mullah Nasruddin. So Mullah Nasruddin simply means teacher in Turkish, and he happened to be a very wise soul, and it so happened that his wife was giving birth. And this was about 800 or 900 years ago. In those days, they had no electricity. And his wife was in the delivery room with the midwife, and there was only one candle. And he was sitting in the waiting room waiting for his wife to deliver the baby. And so 15 or 20 minutes go by, half an hour goes by, and finally the midwife comes running out holding a baby boy and says, "Congratulations, Mullah. You're the proud father of a beautiful baby boy." And he's very excited, as you can imagine an expectant father would be. And he holds the baby boy. He's all smiles and joy and happiness. But the midwife, she runs right back into the delivery room. And another 15 to 20 minutes go by. And all of a sudden, she comes back out again, this time holding a baby girl. She says, "Congratulations, Mullah. You are the proud owner of a baby, a beautiful baby girl." And of course, he was a little surprised, because in those days they didn't have sonograms. So, and there were no way of knowing how many babies were coming down the track. So, excited, happy, but a little bit surprised with the maybe additional responsibility. But the midwife, she runs right back into the delivery room again. And he's sitting there, wondering what is going on. So another 20 minutes go by, and the midwife comes out, this time holding another baby boy. It says, "Congratulations, Mullah. You are the proud father of another baby boy." And his eyes turn up, and a look of shock comes on his face. He puts down the two babies, and he runs into the delivery room. He comes up to the candle, and he blows the candle out right in front of the midwife. And the midwife says, "What are you doing? Why are you blowing the candle out?" And he says, "Whoever sees the light, they want to come out." So this is actually a humorous tale. There's always several levels of meaning when we look at these humorous stories. And in many ways, this is the theme of our whole evening. So obviously on the most simple moral level, one can sympathize with Mullah's reluctance to have 3 children and the difficulties that arise in being a father in that circumstance. But at another level, the metaphor goes a little deeper. Whoever sees the light, they do want to come out. They want to come out of what? They want to come out of the prison house of this body that we do not know is even a prison house. So whoever sees the light realizes what darkness is. And it's not till we see the light that we understand the nature of darkness and how the darkness entraps us. But on another level, it symbolized something even more profound. And that is the most profound. And that is what the great spiritual masters would call our second birth. So what is the second birth? The second birth is our spiritual birth. So all of you are here because you were born into a physical body. That's your physical birth, right? And this we can all understand. But to understand our spiritual birth is a little bit more difficult. And that same question came up when a follower of Jesus by the name of Nicodemus said to Jesus, when Jesus said, "You must be born again." And Nicodemus said, "Well, wait a second. How can I get back into the womb of my mother?" And Christ said, you don't understand. Flesh is born of flesh, and spirit is born of spirit. So what is this second birth that all great spiritual traditions have been talking about? We call it Diksha in Hinduism. It's called Namdan in the Sant tradition. It's called baptism. It's called many different names in different traditions. But it is a birth into the beyond. It is a birth into the higher reality of the Spirit. It is a birth into the light, which is love and which is truth. And it is that birth which is the gift of grace of a competent spiritual teacher. This is what the great saints come to give us. Every saint who has walked this path, who has walked this earth, has been a giver of light. When people came to Jesus, he said, I am the light of the world, and whosoever shall come to me shall not walk in darkness. This is what his words were. And this is the message, the perennial message, that all saints have given, regardless of religious tradition, and regardless of time, and regardless of epoch. And it is that birth that we all seek, and is the beginning of our spiritual journey. Connecting with that light is the beginning of our spiritual journey. And the amazing thing is, in the same way that we have no idea what it is to experience life in the physical body until we are here, we have no idea what the life of the Spirit is until we connect with that divine light that is within us. So, there's a beautiful story, which for me gives us some idea of what this journey is all about. This is a story, actually, about a story. It's a story about a young man who was reading in the Gospels where Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. I go there to prepare a place for you. And if it had not been so, I would have told you. And so this young man was very perplexed. I don't know, most of you who have read the Gospels should remember these lines. But he was very perplexed, and he was a sincere seeker. He wanted to know, what is the meaning of that? So he went to his local minister and said, okay, what is the meaning of this? So the local minister said, well, I will answer it, but let me tell you a story. So he said, the minister began to tell this tale. He said there were two people who were leaving this physical world and going up to the judgment seat of God. And you know, in all traditions, we talk about the judgment seat of God. And actually, that's a kind of misnomer between you and me, because God doesn't judge us. He has unconditional love for us. It is we who judge ourselves and judge others. But just because humans call it the judgment seat doesn't mean it really is. All it is a reflection of our own view of what we have happened and what has happened to us in this lifetime. And we'll talk more about that. So they're going up to heaven, and they're greeted by the angel. So in all traditions, they talk about two recording angels. One who records all the good deeds, and one records all the not so good deeds. And based upon those good or not so good deeds, we are taken to a place. So they're waiting in line there. And the angel comes up and says, okay, I'm ready to take you two guys. Just get in my little angel mobile, and I'll take you to your locations. So the one person happened to be a minister himself, and he had spent his entire life preaching the gospel. And year after year, week after week, day after day, he'd been calling people to the Lord, he'd been calling people to God. And so he really believed in his heart of hearts that, you know, good things were in store for him. Great and good things were in store for him. And the other person happened to be a taxi cab driver from India. And so they get in the car, Angelmobile, whatever name you want to call it, and they're driving along, all of a sudden they come to a stop. And they look out of the window, and they see this magnificent estate, this beautiful palatial home, with gorgeous fountains and flora and fauna, and everything is perfect and pristine. The beauty surpasses anything you can imagine or anything that humans could create in their wildest imagination. And he's thinking, wow, I knew it would be good, but I didn't know it would be this good. But then the angel turns to the taxi cab driver and says, this is your stop. You get out here. And so he's a little shocked because he was thinking, well, that, should have been me. Because, after all, I've been preaching the gospel for all these years, and that's really what I was expecting. But no, the taxi cab driver got out, so he's thinking, okay, that's what the taxi cab driver is going to get. Imagine what I'm going to get, right? If an ordinary taxi cab, wow, he's so excited, he's so expectant. So they go a little further, and all of a sudden the scenery changes, starts to look kind of ugly. And before you know it, they're out of all those beautiful gardens, and they're standing in the middle of a desert. And he looks out the window, he sees this mud hut. No electricity, no plumbing, no sanitation, the walls are made of mud, the roof is made of straw. And the angel said, here's your stop. And the guy says, wait a second, this can't be my stop. Check your records again. It must be a mistake. It must have been the other guy who was supposed to be here. And so the angel looks again and says, no, this is your stop. So he looks at the angel and says, how can this be? Can you at least explain to me what happened? And he said, sure. He said, you have been preaching the gospel all your life. You have been bringing people to the Lord all your life. But every single time you open your mouth, you put everybody to sleep. And so people, instead of being called to God, they've been called into slumber. On the other hand, this taxi cab driver from Delhi, India, and anybody from Delhi, India? Yep. All of you people from Delhi, India should get this one. We know that the people in Delhi, India, when you get in the taxi cab, things are kind of like they are here in the West. Traffic signals and lights don't really exist, and animals of all sorts and all kinds of things happen on the streets. And so as soon as people got into this particular cab driver's taxi, he was going at such a ferocious, fearless pace that the minute people got in, they started praying to God Almighty the entire time they were in the taxi, and when they got out, they were much closer to God. Humorous, but there is a thread of meaning that is very important to consider. So many of us would love to go to heaven. We would love to have those palatial gardens. Wouldn't mind it right now either, would we? We would love to think that everything is going to be beautiful and wonderful. But what really determines the reality that we will experience afterwards? What are the determining factors? And what this story is telling us is not what you think you want, it's what you are and what you have done that goes with you. This is a major realization for people. First of all, it implies that there is no salvation after death. Think about that. Hazur Baba Samadsen, one of the great teachers of the Sant tradition, said, if anybody promises you salvation after death, thank them very nicely and walk the other direction. What does this mean? It means whatever we are now is what we will be on the other side. Whatever thoughts, words, and deeds we have accumulated is what we will take with us as our only luggage. We will not take our bodies even. We will not take our possessions. We will not take our relatives. We will not take our family. We will not take anything. But we will take all of our thoughts, words, and deeds, and the reactions of those thoughts, words, and deeds, and that is the heaven that we have created here. Think about that. Heaven is not a location. Neither is hell a location. Heaven is a state of consciousness, and so is hell, that you and I are creating every moment of our life, including this moment now. With every choice that we make, we are creating a heaven or a hell in this life, and whatever we are experiencing here is what we will take with us to that side. It is just like walking in from one room from the outside and taking off your coat and walking into a new room without your coat. No difference. So it is here, in this life, where the spiritual journey of the soul must begin. It is here in this body where we have to transform ourselves now, in this lifetime, not in some future afterlife, which is just the accumulation of everything that we have done. So what are the three fundamental questions that every great tradition must answer for us? It is why we turn to religion. It's why we turn to spirituality. The first is, who am I? Who is the real I? Two, where have I come from? And what will happen at the time of death, and where will I go? These are the three fundamental questions all spiritual and religious traditions must answer, but not intellectually. They must answer those experientially. We must know before we leave this life where we are going. We must have been there before. We must have seen that place before and know the environment. And we will know where we are going and where we have come because they are the same place. So these realities are the realities that all great spiritual teachers came to teach us. In fact, not teach us, but to imbibe from them through their presence. So we are not, as one great teacher said, human beings trying to have some ethereal spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we have had this experience many, many times, again and again and again. Because we did not graduate. So there's no social promotion in spirituality. You know, in colleges and sometimes in high schools, if a student does not make the grade because he reaches a certain age, sometimes they'll promote him anyways. Some of you are teachers, know what I'm talking about. Well, the spirituality doesn't work that way, okay? You get the just desserts of what you have accumulated, what I have accumulated. And that's the inexorable law of karma. So, we have to prepare for this journey, but how can we prepare for this journey? What are the prerequisites for preparing for this journey? So let me share with you another story that helps illuminate this very important truth. This is a story about a very interesting kingdom. And this kingdom was a kingdom in which the king would reside with full power for 7 years, but after 7 years he would be banished to a faraway land, a jungle. And this tradition had gone on for many, 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 many generations. And each king would rule for 7 years, and they would rule with absolute power and providence over all their kingdom, with great power and health and wealth. But at the end of the 7th year, they would be banished and sent away to this jungle with nothing in it at all. And every year, at the end of the 7th year, those kings would leave in fear, with great anxiety, because they knew that they went from having everything to having nothing, with no place to stay, with no food, no provisions, nothing at all whatsoever. And so it was a very painful moment for them. It was a moment not of exaltation, but of great fear, anxiety, depression. But it so happened that one king was very, very wise. He had seen this going on for generation after generation, and when he was elected or selected king, he saw the end in the beginning. And this is a term that we need to understand. Seeing the end in the beginning is what spirituality is all about. To seeing the effects of our thoughts, words, and deeds before we commit that thought or that word or that deed into action. And he saw that at the end of 7 years, these people, these great kings, walked out of the palace with nothing, empty-handed, penniless, poverty-stricken, and filled with fear. And he said, hey, there's got to be a better way. And so he used his intelligence, which is God's gift that we all have. And that intelligence is the gift to discern truth from falsehood. It is the gift to discern what is true from what is impermanent and what is not lasting. It is the gift to know darkness from light. That is what your intelligence has been given to us to understand, and to use that intelligence for that purpose. And he said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use all the resources of my command, and I will create a palace in this faraway land that will be far superior to any palace I'm living in now. So when his time came, he left with a smile. He left with joy in his heart. He knew where he was going because he had been there. He had built a palace for himself. He had built provisions for him. And all of his needs were taken care of. So this is an obvious metaphor for the journey that we need to do today. Not tomorrow, today. So, before we begin this journey, and this journey, whether we know it or not, you're on it, okay? That's already a given. Some of us, we're aware of it. Some of us have no clue. It doesn't matter. We're still on that journey. So what is that journey? It is the journey to become a true human being. We assume because we have a human form that we are human beings. No. We are human beings, but we are not human beings. We are not humane beings. We are not beings filled with love, compassion, and forgiveness. We are not beings filled with gratitude, joy, and service. That is a definition of a human being. That is the curriculum. That is the journey here, now, today, for each and every one of us, whether we know it or not. And how do we get these lessons is very important. We get them through every single person we meet and have a relationship with. Whether we meet that person for 1 hour, 1 week, 1 day, 1 year, a decade, or a lifetime, it is the same exact lesson. It is the lesson of unconditional love. Whether you know you're on the journey or not, you're getting that lesson. And nobody has ever or will ever master that without the spiritual rebirth. We need the spiritual rebirth to complete this journey. And that is why all the great saints, all the great mystics, and all the great teachers of humanity said, look, it is doable, it is possible, it is real, and you too can do it. And it is your ordinary duty. Ordinary duty. So what are the, I would call them, the pillars of right understanding that we need to have before we begin the journey, or I would say as we are on this journey? These are very important, because these are the motivations that give us the strength, that give us the wind in our sails, that give us the energy and the human will to transform our lives on a moment-to-moment basis. What are they? And these are the understandings that the great teachers of all tradition have given. And I share these with you. These are things that I have heard from my own masters, not once, not twice, but every single time they speak about these four understandings. At least one, sometimes two, sometimes all of them. Because from right understanding comes right thoughts. And from right thoughts come right words. And from right words come right action. If we do not have right understanding, right thoughts will not arise. And we will remain in the state of illusion and delusion. And that state of illusion and delusion is categorized by the experience of disharmony and dis-ease and disintegration. Instead of feeling connected, instead of feeling love and peace, we feel depression, we feel fear, we feel anger. We're in a state of hurry and worry. We're in a state of doubt and uncertainty. These are the states that are actually the hells we live in today. They are not the completion of the journey. So the first is to recognize there is a divine purpose behind the life of every single human being who comes into this world. Nobody, my master said, has been created for nothing. There is a divine purpose behind the life of every single one of us. And that divine purpose is to find our highest purpose. And that highest purpose is to understand who we are and to complete this journey. This is the mystery of humility. Because if everyone has created for a unique divine purpose, then we have something to learn from each and every human being on this planet. Think about that. Everyone is our teacher, if we are open. So we are conscious entities that are now ensouled in mind, matter, in illusion. And we have to come out of this delusion. That's the first thing that we need to understand. So the great mystics have called it Maya, we've called it illusion, called it many different things. But what is it essentially? It is when we identify with ourselves as this limited body and this limited mind. And so long as we are identified with ourselves as our limited body and our limited mind, we can never experience lasting happiness or peace or real love. The second truth, the second pillar, the second understanding is that this place is not our home. We cannot stay in this body very long. I'm looking out into the audience, and I see people who are in their 20s maybe, some of you in your 30s, some of you in your 40s, some 50s, some 60s, 70s, maybe even more than that. And I can guarantee you when I was 20, life looked eternal. And when I was 30, life still looked eternal. And every year we get older and older, but we still don't recognize that we have to leave this world. And what are we doing to prepare for that journey? Everybody is getting the eviction notice. Everybody. But do you know the date of your eviction notice? Do you know the time? Do you know the place? Do you know the manner? This journey is about answering that question. And if we do not know the time, if we do not know the place, and it could be tomorrow, I may not be here tomorrow. Is there any guarantee that I will be here tomorrow? I could drop dead on this podium before this talk ends. Don't think that hasn't happened. Am I ready to go with a smile? Am I ready to go and say, God, take me? I am so ready. Yesterday is too long to wait. And if we cannot say that, we are not ready. We are not ready. If we cannot go with a smile, and I'm not talking just a smile, I'm talking joy. My master, you said, look, when you were born, you were crying and everybody was happy and ecstatic. When you leave, let them cry, let you be happy and ecstatic. You celebrate. That's the greatest moment of your life. That's when the keys, they open up the prison house and they say, hey, you're free. We have a topsy-turvy view. So remember how precious every single day is, because you don't know if tomorrow comes. Keep that. I tell people, I'm your refrigerator. Put a little sign up there. Who knows when the day will come? Make this day live as if it were your last. Now, some people think I'm joking when I say put it on your refrigerator. I'm not, folks. I'm telling you, put it on your refrigerator. Engrave it in your heart and think about it every day. It will change your reality. It will change the way you see the world, and you'll make every moment precious and filled with the love, because you know tomorrow may not come. These are powerful teachings that the great masters are giving. Are we listening? The third thing is we are all accountable. This is what the law of karma is all about. We've heard the term the law of karma. What does it mean? It means that we are accountable. That everything that we do is recorded and we're going to face the consequences of that. So if that is the case, that means that we have to pay attention to every single thought, word, and deed that we are bringing forth into this world. Let's be honest and look around at the world today. Why is there so much suffering? Why is there so much pain? Why are there epidemics and starvation? Why are we under the threat of nuclear terrorism? Why is the very globe that we are living in today at the threat of extinction because of our behaviors? Because we do not realize that our actions have consequences. And we will be held accountable. When we fully get that, that is the most empowering thing that can happen in your life. Why is that so empowering? It's empowering because now you know you're in the driver's seat, you can make some changes. If we don't get in the driver's seat, if we keep passing the buck to everybody around, right? Oh, it's my parents, they were to blame. Oh, it's my boss. It's my spouse, it's my children, it's my religion. If everybody else was to blame, we we take no responsibility. And as a result, no change happens. So, we are accountable. There's an interesting story I'd like to share with you, kind of a funny story. But it points out this kind of reverse thinking that we have about life. The story about my friend Mullah Nasruddin again. And Mullah Nasruddin one day went into a Turkish bathhouse, and he was dressed as a kind of a poor vagabond, very poor clothing, did not have, he looked like he could have been a beggar off the street. So in these time, they had these things called Turkish baths, and people would come in, 4 or 5 people would attend to you and clean you and give you different, services. And when they saw him, that he was a poor kind of beggar, they thought to themselves, well, this guy, he's not going to tip us very much. And since their wages were based largely on the tips, they decided to give him the very kind of cheap service, the lowest level service that you could get. Very perfunctory, they weren't putting much attention into him. They just get him out of here, So when he leaves, very interesting thing happens. He pulls out of his pocket like 10 or 15 gold coins, which is a huge amount of money, and he gives this as a tip to these attendants in the bathhouse. And they're all shocked out of their mind that they received such a large tip for just lousy work. Now, some of you maybe have had that experience every once in a while. It is quite shocking, isn't it? So, he comes back the following week. Very interesting. And he's dressed regally. And with beautiful flowing robes, and very neat and clean, and everything's like, they come in, they recognize him right away, and this time they're thinking to themselves, wow, if we give him the red carpet service, imagine what amazing tip he's going to give us this time. So they're fawning all over him. They're just working so hard to give him the best service they could possibly give. Each one trying to outdo the other in performance with joy. And so finally he leaves. He's about to leave. And this time he pulls out of his wallet the lowest denomination bill that you have in the Turkish currency, and he gives it to them. And they're shocked. They're thinking, my God, what is going on here? And they ask him, he says, what happened? Why are you giving us such a lousy tip, such a small amount of money? He said, this week's tip was for last week, and last week was for this week. We cannot fool the universe, folks. This path starts with sincerity and ends with sincerity. We all think we can pull the wool over God's eyes. Sorry. Not happening. It is for this reason that my master instituted what he called a self-introspection forum. And he said, criticize yourself as you would criticize others. He said, don't spare yourself. We spare ourselves. We don't want to see the bad side of us. We want people to think, and we want to think, oh, we're pretty good people. Yeah, maybe have little faults here and there. We're pretty good people, Nothing wrong with us, really. Yeah, we make a few mistakes, but by and large, we're really quite good people. And we do give in charity. We do try to, do the right thing for our elders. And yes, occasionally we forget. And sometimes we're not so kind. But by and large, we fool ourselves. So, what is the teaching? The teaching is to understand and really take seriously this law of karma. Okay, when was the last time you came up to a friend, a good friend, and asked them how they were doing? And they said, I've been in a state of total peace, total ecstasy, total joy for the last 6 months, uninterrupted. How many of you have any friends like that out there? Anybody, feel free to raise your hand. This is interactive. Anybody? Did any of your friends ever say that? You know, we have a hard time putting together 5 minutes of joy per day. 5 minutes of true peace. 5 minutes of gratitude. 5 minutes of tension-free, stress-free. That's what we are talking about. That person, it should be you, it should be me. Introduce yourself to you, because that's the joy that exists within us if we take the time to be reborn, to connect with the light. And the last, most important, is to recognize that this place we call Earth, this is a school. It has a curriculum. It has graduation requirements. It has pop quizzes. And the curriculum is for one purpose only, to make us true human beings. And everybody comes with some good and some bad. And if we're expecting this life to be filled with roses strewn all the way to the end, that's not possible. When we understand that, we realize we are here to learn the tough lessons of unconditional love and service in this very tough place called Earth. And every opportunity and every moment, there will be a test. There will be pop quizzes. And even before you leave today, there will be opportunities. Even before you leave today, you will be able to either smile at a brother and sister that you don't know just because you're happy, or maybe you'll just walk by them and not notice them. Or will you walk out of here with a joy in your heart and just beaming in all directions? That's your choice, isn't it? Isn't it? It is your choice today. Mother Teresa said, smile. Smile 5 times a day at that difficult person you have in your life that you think you could never smile at. That's what she said. But this is the work that we are here for. So what are the requirements for this journey? Those are the prerequisites. Well, what are the requirements? We need a vehicle for this journey. On any journey we take, we need a vehicle, right? So what is the vehicle on this spiritual journey? Just like when you travel in the outer world, you have a car, you have a plane, you have a bus. The vehicle for this journey is the inner light and sound, called the Shabd, called the Nam, called the Word in the Christian tradition. That is your vehicle. That is what you will travel on through the spiritual journey into the beyond. So what is this Nam, this word, this light and sound principle of which all mystics and all masters and all teachers and all climes and all epics have spoken about and who have tried to connect us with? It is who we are. We are beings of light. We are beings of love. We are beings of life. We are conscious entities. We are not this physical body. When this light, which I am, connects with the greater light, that is the spiritual rebirth that we are talking about. That is the moment of illumination. That is when the light goes on in the room and we realize what this whole thing is all about. So we need to connect to that. And the methodology that comes from that is meditation. And we'll talk more about this technology of meditation that has been part and parcel of every single great spiritual religious tradition and spiritual paths from all different denominations. So Rajendra Singh has said, if you don't go within, you go without. We can only connect to this light and sound, to this Sham, to this Nam, to this Jyoti, Shruti power, this Na, this Udgit, the different names, the different, by going within. We can't get it by going to the mall. Can't get it by watching TV. You can get it on the internet, but you can get it on the internet. Okay? And if you connect to the internet, which is running its own show 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can get connected. And the mystery of all mysteries is that people do not go within even though they know the answer's there. That is the mystery of all mysteries. So, through the grace and the guidance of a competent teacher, they can teach us this technique, and we can get into the vehicle of Nam, this vehicle of light and sound, and every day begin this inner journey. Not just on holidays or weekends or when you're feeling good, but every single day. And I'd like to make a connection between that and what we call the near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, or some people call them radical epiphanies, and what does that sound and look like? So what is an OBE, or a near-death experience, or a radical epiphany? It is when people have the experience, the transcendent experience of this light, whether they were religious or not, whether they were prepared for it or not, whether they were even atheists or not. They experienced this light, some through a crisis, or through an operation where they were declared dead. Some like an out-of-body experience. It could have been with eyes open, they had the same experience. And these experiences have been recorded as far back as Plato and even earlier. So out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and radical epiphanies, they're nothing new in the history of humanity, folks. The first recorded out-of-body experience is in Plato's dialogues, actually. So there's nothing new here, nothing new under the sun. It's the same truth, just put in a different form so we can hear it again. Human beings are basically tone deaf. You can't tell them once, twice, you've got to beat it in their heads every single day. The only way humans ever get it. So, it is this light that we need to connect to. So what else do we need? Just like in any journey, you need a guide. You need someone to show you the way. And everybody knows, no matter what field that we are professing, we have studied with people who knew more than we did, who understood more than we did. And just like any journey, you want to take someone who's been there, right? What is a spiritual guide? Let's define the term, because we don't understand. A spiritual guide is one who has completed the journey and can show us the way there as well. That is the definition of spiritual guide. When we look at the life of Jesus, or Moses, or Buddha, or Kabir, or Guru Nanak, or any of the great saints, known or unknown, because there are many that are unknown, they didn't come up to us and say, hey, look guys, I did it, but you can't. You guys aren't good enough. This is just for me. They said, this is what each and every one of you is born to do, created to do. And it is the completion of that task that you are here to do. That is what they said. And with the guidance of a great teacher, we can do it also. My teacher used to say, what one human being can do, another can do with the right guidance, help, and inspiration. So whose footprints are we following in? We want to follow in the footprints of Jesus. We want to follow in the footprints of the great masters of humanity. And to do that, we have to follow their advice. We have to take their advice seriously. And listen to them, all right? Not with a half an ear, right? But with the belief that they can truly help us. And that's truly the wise who listen. So, my spiritual master, Sankhya Paul Singh, summarized spirituality for me in such a succinct way. He said, look, spirituality / love. It cannot be bought. All in agreement? Okay? If nowhere else tonight, we have agreement with that, right? can it be taught? Can it be taught? He said, no, it cannot be taught. It can be caught. Where? From someone who is an overflowing fountain of spirituality and love. So, some Jefferson used to say, does say, he says, love is an infection, be a carrier. How do we get spirituality? Because we come in contact with someone who's overflowing with that love, and by infection we get it. The greatest gift that I have had in my life, and I'm just sharing you the best of what I have given you. I speak in different places around the world. I want to give you the best of what I have been given over 45 years, and I can tell you the best of what I have given is that the company of a realized being is the greatest gift that you will have in this lifetime.
Yes.
If we can take that opportunity and use it, we will progress by leaps and bounds. What's the third thing we need? We need the vehicle, we need the guidance, right? We need some provisions, right? We need some provisions and some support on this journey, or I would call it the fuel, right? What is the fuel? Like you have the fuel for an airplane, you have fuel for a car, you have fuel for... What is the fuel on this journey? What is going to make this whole thing go? And the answer is selfless love. That is the fuel on your journey, selfless love. There isn't a being on this planet that can live without love. Our whole existence depends upon love. From the moment we are born, if we are not given love, we will die. They've actually done studies that children that are unloved, uncared for, within 40 or 8 years, or 60 or 72 hours will die. Love is the fuel for this journey. It is our loving selflessness towards others that will fuel us on our path home. It is the passport into the kingdom of what we call God. That is what we have to do. And meditation is to teach us how to be more and more selfless. And selfless service is truly only service if it's selfless. The more we can give of others, the more we are gifted. The more we learn to live for others, the happier we will be. If we want to be unhappy, live for yourself, no problem. You want to be happy, you want to be joyful, live for others. This is the fuel on this journey, and it's the only thing that will power us into the higher spiritual dimensions. There is no other way. So the sacred trust that we have been given, the sacred trust is to wish for others what we wish for ourselves. And I'd like to end with a story and then what I call the realizations of this journey. What are the realizations that come out of this journey? But first let me share you a story based upon this comment. Wish for others what you would wish for yourself. And this story represents for me a kind of culmination of what we've been talking about. All right? So this is a story about a man who was quite wealthy, and he was coming toward the end of his life. And he had a son who was only 2 or 3 years old, and he could not give the vast amount of wealth that he had for his son, because he was not at an age where he could understand what it was or use it. So instead, he brought the elders of the community together, and he told the elders of the community, he said, listen, this is my estate. Take what you wish for yourselves and give to Arif the rest. So, they understood that to mean to take whatever they wanted for themselves and then give the rest, whatever was left, to Arif. Arif was his son's name. And so the son grows up year after year, and finally he reaches the age of maturity. He's about 18 years old. And the elders of the community call Arif to read him the will that his father had left him. And they read the will to Arif, and he says, your father told us to take whatever we wish for ourselves and to Arif the rest. And as they were reading that, all of a sudden, an amazing thing happened. And that amazing thing was that a being of light appeared out of nowhere, radiating light and love. And some people call it the hidden guide of souls. Some people call it the master power. Some people call it the guru power. People have called it the Christ power. But that Christ power, guru power, God power, is the power that is guiding all humanity and steps in just at the right moment to correct our erring ways. And this being of light said, no, my friends, you have misinterpreted the meaning of the Father's bequest. What he meant was, whatever you wish for yourselves is what you should wish for the reef. And because they were intelligent and wise elders, they immediately recognized the wisdom in this. And they gave the entire estate to Arif. And Arif, who was a God-inspired soul, he took that money and he invested it in the community, not in himself, but in the entire community. And not only did he prosper, but everybody in the community prospered because he understood the fundamental lesson, which is only the unity of all will ensure the well-being of all. Only the unity of all will ensure the well-being of all. And not only did the community prosper, the elders prosper, became a model community. But there's a more profound lesson here, which is the message of the great masters. And what is this more profound message? The more profound message is, folks, we all have a spiritual inheritance waiting for us. That inheritance is beyond your wildest imagination, beyond every conception that you could probably have or apprehension. It is the spiritual wealth of love, compassion, and forgiveness. It is the light, the infinite light and love of God that awaits each and every one of us. And who is holding that spiritual inheritance? It is the God power, is holding it in trust for you and for me until we reach what? The age of spiritual maturity. And what is the definition of spiritual maturity? When we understand that we are all one, and that whatever we do to others, we are doing to ourselves, that the unity of all can only be completed when we see the well-being of all. When we are ruled not by the petty self and ego, but by unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness. That's the curriculum, graduation, requirements for your divine inheritance. And each and every one of us will receive that. It is waiting for us in degrees. So I'd like to end with a couple of quotations from my great spiritual masters that summarize the realizations. What does this feel like? What does it look like? We have to understand, what is this end journey? What is it supposed to be? Open our eyes, God, to the reality. Okay? into the light. So Sam Darshan, the great poet and mystic, who I had the great opportunity to spend 15 years at his feet, he said, "What does it matter if I'm called a man? In reality, I am the soul of love. The entire earth is my home, and the universe is my country." Let me repeat that. He said, "What does it matter if I'm called a man? In reality, I am the soul of love. The entire earth is my home, and the universe my country." That is what God realization looks like. We become the soul of love. That's who we are already. We just have not realized it. This whole humanity is one. One consciousness in many bodies. And this is echoed by Sant Kripal Singh, who tells us. He says, "There is only one caste, one religion, and one God. There is only one caste, the caste of humanity. There is only one religion, the religion of love. There is only one dharma, the dharma of truth. There is only one God, the omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. And there is only one language, the language of the heart." So I